Okay, for equation of a straight line, to determine it, we need to know the format in which we find straight lines. So this is the first type. Let's look at the straight line for now. So we have y is equal to mx plus c, which you're familiar with, or you could use y is equal to ax plus q. Basically means the same thing, only thing the letters are different. In this case, your m is your gradient, right, as well as your a will be the gradient, and then your y-intercept is your c and your q. Means the same thing as I mentioned, but letters are different. Okay, so moving forward, we are given a question like this here on the left, and you find that we've given a coordinate 3 and 9 on your x and y. Now, using this information, we need to determine the equation of this line. Okay, firstly, we need to look at this line here cuts the y-axis at this point here. Now we know that point to be 0 and 0, so we know that is basically cutting the y line on 0. So we know at the moment our y-intercept will be 0, right? So our y-intercept is 0, so we know that we can substitute that. Now remember, we're going to substitute into this two formats which I've mentioned above, right? So all we need to do is, if I take this y-intercept and I substitute it into this, right, that will be there, and then I take this point here, which is my x and y, and I substitute it into, there's my y here, there's my x here. So if I substitute that there, all I need to work out, I have three knowns. That's a y, that's the x, and that's the c. So I have three knowns. All I need to do is work out for m, and then I've found the equation of the straight line. So let's substitute this here. So we have y is equal to mx plus c. So let's substitute. The y will be, there's my y and my x here. The y will be 9 is equal to m. Now we're solving for m, and the x will be 3, right? I put that in brackets because I need to know that I'm substituting there, and then the 0 is my y-intercept, so that will be 0. Okay, now I need to solve, so I'll have 9 is equal to 3m, right? Divide both sides by 3, and my answer will be m is equal to 3. So therefore, now putting it back into the format which we know, it will be y is equal to, substitute the in place of the m, substitute the 3 x, and we don't say plus 0 because our intercept is 0. So basically this is your equation of the straight line. Now in this next one here, we given the 2 points. So we know that we've given the 5 on the y line and we minus 2 on the x line. So we need to determine the equation of this straight line. So coming back to y is equal to mx plus c. Okay, so now that we have this format here, let's substitute and let's see what we can do. Now clearly we can see that our y-intercept will be 5. So we know our c value will be 5 because we know the c is y-intercept. So our c value is 5, and now we got a point here. That point is made up of an x and a y. So that point is basically, it's minus 2, which is my x value, and 0, which is my y value. Now I have a point and I have the x-intercept. So I'm going to substitute into this. My x and y will go there. I have the c, and then I'm just going to solve for m, and therefore I'll arrive at my equation of my line. So let's do this. Y will be, okay, let's put the formula down. Y is equal to mx plus c. This is the format for a straight line, right? And then let's put 0, plug it in, and then we have m, which we're going to solve for. X will be minus 2. Please make sure you remember the sign. And then we have plus 5 is our c value. So solving this here now, we'll have, let's take this onto the other side. So okay, let's make it easier for you. Let's remove the brackets. Now we're going to take this onto the other side. It'll be 2m is equal to 5, and divide both sides by 2, and we got m to be 2 comma 5, or we can leave it as 5 over 2. Okay, so now let's substitute this into our format. So we'll have y is equal to 5 over 2, which is my m value, x, and my c value will be plus 5, and this solves our equation. Okay, so there's 2 points given to you on a straight line. So all we need to do now is we need to find the gradient. Now you know gradient, you would have learned, some of us learned that the gradient is the rise over the run, which is your change in y over your change in x. That's fine, that works out for you. You can form your triangle and you can work out your rise over your run. That's fine. Okay, that method works for you. You use it. Use whichever methods is best for you. Okay, we'll be using the y is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So all I'm going to do is take those 2 points, which is minus 4 and 6, and the other point is minus 2 and 0. Now I'm going to label it according to this equation on the top here. So I'll have x1 y1 x2 y2, and I'm going to substitute in the above equation. So it starts off with y2. What's my y2 is 0. My y1 is 6. Okay, then x2 is minus 2, and x1 is minus 4. Now I put it in a bracket because you can't have two minuses next to each other without a bracket. So I have minus 6 over minus 2 plus 4. Now if I further simplify that, I'll have minus 6 over plus 2, and that will give me an answer of minus 3. Okay, if you use the rise and run method, you'll still get the same answer, which is minus 3. Now that I've worked out the gradient, so I have my m value. So I need to take one of these points. I can take that point there. So that point is made up of a x and a y. So there's my y here, there's my x here. I worked out the gradient. So all I need to do now is work out my c value, and then I've got the equation of the line. So let's start off. Let's substitute y is equal to mx plus c. So my y value from this point here will be 6 is equal to, my m value is minus 3. X value is minus 4. Remember, it's mx, so that means there's a multiplication taking place. So you put it in a bracket, and plus c. That's the one I'm going to work out. So I'll have 6 is equal to plus 12 plus c. So 6, right? Now remember, the plus 12 needs to go on the other side. Minus 12 is equal to c. So minus 6 is equal to c. Okay, so now that I have my m and my c, I'll just substitute now. I'll say, therefore, equation of this straight line is equal to minus 3x, minus 3x minus 6. So that's my equation of my line. All right, to find the equation of a parabola, okay, you need to look at this diagram here. It's given to you, and they asked you to determine the equation. So by looking at it clearly, we can see that we are already given the y-intercept. Right now, we can appreciate this when we know the format for the equation of a parabola. So it is y is equal to ax squared plus q. Now this q is your y-intercept. All right, and this here will tell you whether it's going to be a happy face, it'll be a positive value, or a sad face, which is a negative value. Right, so keeping this in mind, let's continue with this. Okay, so now we got our y-intercept, right, which is this section here, and we got the value to be 1. So let's say y-intercept, or our q, we got it to be 1, right? Okay, so now that we got our q value, let's see what else we can do. The next thing we can do is, we've got a point that's given to us. Now if I take that point and substitute it into this equation here with my x, this is my x, and there's a y there. So I'm going to substitute into that equation there. And then what I'm left to find, I've got my y, I've got my x, I've got my c now, or should I say q, which is my y-intercept, and all I need to do is work out my a, and I worked out the equation of the parabola. So let's do this. Y is equal to ax squared plus q. So we're going to substitute now. So my y value from this, remember I'm looking at this section here now, my y value will be 5 is equal to, a value is unknown. Now I'm going to substitute the minus 2 there for my x value. Remember, it's squared. Keep in mind that you must square that, right? And my y-intercept is plus 1. Right, that's this value here. Right, remember that's x and y, and this is my y value. So it's my y-intercept, which is 1. Okay, now that I have this here, I'm going to solve for a. So I have 5 is equal to a into, remember that'll be 4 plus 1. So I'll have 5 minus 1 is equal to 4a, and I'll have 4 is equal to 4a. Divide both sides by 4. Okay, and a will actually be 1. So now that I've got a to be 1, I will substitute into what I know to be the formula. So let's just rewrite it so you know how I'm substituting. So I know thus far my a value and I know my q value. So my equation of my line will be y is equal to, a is 1, so I don't have to write the 1 down, x squared, and my q value is 1, so y is equal to x squared plus 1. That's the equation of my line. So let's look at the next one. Okay, so looking at this next one, what's good to note from the previous one is that our a value was actually a positive, so therefore the graph was like this. So now looking at this and keeping in mind, our a value should be a negative, because the one graph that we're looking at now is a sad face, so we'll have to have it as a negative value. So some of the things that you can keep in mind when doing your calculations. Okay, by looking at this yet again, we can see that this point here is obviously known as a turning point. Right, that's your turning point, but we also know that it's cutting the y-axis. So it's cutting the y-axis at 6. So we know our y-intercept to be 6. Right, and we know that that y-intercept is actually our q value. So we know the format to be y is equal to ax squared plus q. So let's substitute, right, into this formula. We know that the q value is 6, but what we're going to do is, just like we've done previously, we're going to take this point here, which is another point given to us, and we're going to substitute into this equation here. So let's do this. Okay, let me just show you. This is my x, this is my y. So let's do this. So we have 4 is equal to a into 2 squared, and remember my y-intercept is 6. So now that I got this here, I am going to work out for a. A is equal to, this should be 4a, right, plus 6. So I'm going to take the 6 and put it on the other side. I'll have 4 minus 6 is equal to 4a, and that should be 4 minus 6 is minus 2 is equal to 4a. Now divide both sides by 4, and I should have an answer of a is equal to minus half. Now that my a is minus half, I can see it's a negative, and it coincides with my sad face. So I have a, I have my q, so I'll just have to substitute into this formula. So I have y is equal to ax squared plus q. So examiner, I know that this is my formula. I know my a value to be minus 1 over 2 x squared, and I know my q amount, which is plus 6. So this becomes the equation of my line. So to find the equation of a hyperbola, you should know, when drawing an hyperbola, you must show the asymptotes. Now in this case, you find that there's no asymptote shown, so you should know by now that the asymptote would be the x and y line. So looking at this format, we have y is equal to a over x plus q. Right, by looking at this part here, we know the q to be your asymptote. It shows your asymptote, so we know the asymptote to be 0. So we'll use the part that, if I had to put it to you this way, I'll have x plus 0. Now we obviously won't show this section here, so we will be working with this part here. So now that I've got that part there, I take this point that's given to me, and I see that it's an x value, it's a y value, so I'm going to substitute it into this formula. So I'll have the y value will be minus 1 is equal to a over, and my x value will be 4. So multiplying that through, remember I'll multiply both sides by 4, I should have minus 4 is equal to a. So my equation of my hyperbola will be y is equal to minus 4 over x. Now I don't have to show the plus 0. Okay, so now that I got this, I see there's another part here that's shown to us, which is this b. What they're asking me to do here is to determine the coordinates of b. So that's the second type of question that can be asked to you. So all we got to do is we need to substitute, right? For b, we need to substitute the values given there. Now the values given there is this p and minus p. So let's do this here, right? We're going to take the same equation here, and we're going to substitute the values given to us for p, and that will determine and give us the actual numbers there. So let's do this here, right? So we're going to take y is equal to minus 4 over x. Right, by looking at it, my x value on this will be minus p, my y value will be p. So let's substitute here. Right, remember I'm going to substitute, right? So I'm looking at the y value. I have p is equal to minus 4 over minus p. Okay, so now what happens here? I'll have to multiply both sides by p. This will become, should I say, by minus p. So times minus p times minus p. Right, by looking at it, this is what I'm going to do. So these p's cancel off here, right? And here I should have minus p squared is equal to minus 4. Now I know I can get rid of that minus. It'll be p squared is equal to 4. And eventually p will equal to plus or minus 2. Now by looking at this, I know that p is equal to plus or minus 2. I can clearly work out that b is, the coordinates of b will be minus p, which is minus 2, and p will be 2. Okay, another type we would get is where you're finding the equation of a hyperbola, y is equal to a over x plus q. Okay, where you find that there is a shift. Now you see, generally when you draw the hyperbola, you show the asymptote. Now asymptote is shown here, which is y is equal to 2. Now we know that will be our q value, right? So the q value is already sorted out. Now by looking at that, we have the q value. I have a coordinate which is x and y here. I will substitute in the equation and I can work out for a. So let's do this. Y is equal to a over x plus q. So my y value is 6 is equal to a over my x value is 2, and my q value is plus 2. So I'll have 6 minus 2 is equal to a over 2. Now 6 minus 2 is 4 is equal to a over 2. Multiply both sides by 2, I will have 8 is equal to a. So now that I worked out the a value, right? So all I need to do now is I worked out the equation of the line. So therefore I'm substitute y is equal to a is 8 over x, and I put my asymptote, which is plus 2. So this is my equation of my line. Further to this, they asked us to work out the coordinate of b. So how do we do this now? Okay, we use the same thing. Now that we worked out the equation of the line, all we need to do is a little bit of substitution to work out the actual coordinate of b. So we know the coordinate of b because b is actually the x-intercept. Now when something is the x-intercept, we know the coordinate will be x and 0 because our y will be 0. At the x-intercept, y is always 0. So we know we have the y value. So we don't have the x. Now looking at this equation, we've got already y is equal to 8 over x plus 2. By looking at that, we have the y. So we don't have the x. So we can sort out the coordinate for b. So let's substitute. So we have 0 is equal to 8 over x plus 2. Right? So what we will do now is, now we'll multiply all by 2. By x. So if you multiply all through by x, we have 0 is equal to 8 plus 2x. Now basically I've got rid of the x that's underneath. You should know this by now because this is grade 8 and 9 work. Okay. So now I'm going to take this 8 and put it on the other side, which is minus 8 is equal to 2x, and divide both sides by 2. And this brings me to x equals to minus 4. Okay, so my coordinate for b will obviously be minus 4, 0. Remember that's a x-intercept, so the y will be 0. Okay, so in working on the equation of an exponential graph, we know that the format is y is equal to a b to the power x plus q. Now in this particular question given to us, they've mentioned that this graph here f is y is equal to b to the power x plus q. Right, that's the format they asked us to use. So we're going to use that now for this particular example. So keeping that in mind, we know that the Q value, your Q value is the asymptote. Now looking at this example, we see no asymptote shown here. So we know that the asymptote will be your x-axis, and we know at the x-axis it means y is equal to 0. So that means this amount here is 0. So we'll be using the rest of the equation. So we'll have y is equal to b to the power x. So now that we have this here, we see on this graph what else is given to us. We see that there's a point here given to us, and there's a x value, there's a y value there. So let's substitute into this equation here. So the y value will be 64 and the x value will be 3. So we know that we need to find the cube root of 64, right? And the cube root of 64 will be 4. So now that we know the value of b, so let's say that the equation will now be y is equal to 4x. Now, so that's your equation of your exponential graph. But the additional question given to us, they want to know the value of p there on that coordinate. So all we're going to do is we're going to substitute into this formula here. So by looking at it, this is my x, this is my y. So let's take the formula. Y is equal to 4 to the power x. So y is p and x is minus 1. Now we know that 4 to the minus 1 is basically 1 over 4. So therefore b is minus 1 and 4. 1 over 4. Okay, so what's been given to us here is an asymptote. We can see that. And we can see a coordinate given to us. So we know that there is a shift taking place. So by looking at this y is equal to 2, we know that our q value will be 2, right? So let's use the formula. Y is equal to bx plus q. Now we see q given to us, which is plus 2, right? By looking at this, I can see that the coordinate is given to us. So we have a x value, we have a y value. So let's substitute in there. So the y is 11 and the x is 2. So now that I got this here, I'm going to solve for b. So I'm going to take the 2 on the other side. I'll say 11 minus 2 is equal to b squared. So 11 minus 2 is 9 is equal to b squared. So I'm going to find the square root of 9, which will be, just showing it to you, so you'll have plus or minus 3. Okay, now we've got two answers here now, which might be a little bit confusing. But remember, there's this restriction. We've learned that b must always be greater than 0. So the b value has to be greater than 0. So therefore my answer will be positive 3. So now that I got that there, I'll substitute. So my equation will actually be y is equal to 3 to the power x Okay, let's sort that out there. 3 to the power x, right? And plus 2. That's my equation. But now there's additional information or question given to us where they want us to give them the coordinate of b. So you generally get this type of question where it's like a leading question. So I've done 2 in 1. So I need to know what is the coordinate of b from my understanding. I know that the coordinate of b is sitting on the y line. So I know when it's sitting on the y line, my x value will always be 0. So that will be the coordinate of b. So let's substitute that into the equation of the graph. So I have y is equal to 3 to the x plus 2. So I have y to be unknown, right? 3 and x will be 0 plus 2, and this will be, this will be 1 plus 2, and y will be 3. So my coordinate for b is actually 0, 3. Okay, so what we have in front of us is two graphs on one plane. So by looking at this, we know from the information given, we see that this is the equation of the parabola, this is your equation of the straight line. Not much is given on the straight line, but obviously from the information we gather, we will formulate that equation. So let's start. Firstly, it says find the coordinate of A. Now A is the y-intercept. Now it's a y-intercept for the parabola. So we know the formula for the parabola is right over here, and we know this 8 here is your y-intercept. So that's a fairly easy question. So the coordinate for A, the coordinate meaning x and the y value is 0, 8. Okay, so now we are asked to find the length of BC. So there's your length of BC here, right over here, right? And we know that those 2 points that are touching there is the intercepts for x. So we know when it comes to x-intercepts, we need to let y equals to 0. Using what? Using the equation. So we'll say y is equal to minus 2x squared plus 8, and 0 is equal to minus 2x squared plus 8. Bring the minus 2x squared on the other side. We have 8. Divide both sides by 2. We have 4, so x is equal to plus or minus 2. So the coordinates would be, for B would be, right, it'll be 2 and 0, and C will be minus 2 and 0. So we know this to be 2 and this to be minus 2. Now we know the distance between those two will be 4 units. So some of you may know the straight line to be y is equal to mx plus c, but they're also using y is equal to ax plus q. So looking at the c, it says here if D is the midpoint of OA, so there's OA here, right, and D is the midpoint there, find the equation of line CE, right, and the values of A and Q. So they're expecting us to use this formula here, and D is the midpoint. So if D is the midpoint, we know that A is 8 on the y-intercept. We've just worked it out. So halfway of that, and this is 0, so after halfway of that, D will be equal to 4. The coordinate of D would be 0 and 4. Alright, so now that we know that the value of D, remember D is what? D is known as our y-intercept, right, for the straight line. So we got the value of D, which is the y-intercept. So let's substitute. We have y is equal to ax plus q. So now we have y is equal to ax, and D is 4, which is the q value. So all we need to do now is to take a coordinate for the x and the y values. So where do we get this from? We get it from here. Because remember, this is where the 2 points meet, 2 graphs meet. So we already know that point. We know that point, that coordinate. We worked out B and C just now. We worked out C to be minus 2 and 0. So let's start. Let's substitute. So there's my x, there's my y. So we have 0 is equal to A into minus 2 plus 4. So let's solve for A. So we have minus 4 is equal to minus 2A. Divide both sides by minus 2, and the answer will be 2. So we've got A to be 2. We've got our Q value, and this is what they asked us to work out. So now that we've worked out that, we've got our equation of our line. So therefore is equal to y is equal to, right, ax. So it'll be 2x plus q, which is our 4. And that answers the question. Okay, so finding the coordinates of E, which is this point here. Now remember, this is y is equal to 2x plus 4. So this is the point where both the graphs meet. So all we need to do is we need to equate the both graphs. So we'll say 2x plus 4 is equal to minus 2x squared plus 8. Now we bring everything onto one side because we see there's a squared there. So it becomes 2x squared plus 2x plus 4, and this here is minus 8 is equal to 0. So it becomes 2x squared plus 2x minus 4 is equal to 0. So we can get rid of the 2's, factorize, we'll have x squared, right, plus x minus 2 is equal to 0. So we use the cross method, which is 1 times 1 and 2 times 1. So this is 2, right, and this is 1. So this takes the plus, this takes the minus. So let's read our answers across. We have, now you should know this by now because this is grade 8 and 9 work, and you have done it early on in the year as well. So we have x plus 2 and we have x minus 1 is equal to 0. So therefore x is equal to minus 2 or x is equal to 1. Okay, so now by looking at this here, we see the position of E. There will be a positive x value. So therefore, this will be the value of the x value of E. So therefore, right, we don't know the y value. Remember, they want the coordinates. So we'll have to substitute that now. So substitute x is equal to 1, right? So where we're going to substitute? We're going to substitute, we'll take the easy one, which is the straight line. So we'll have y is equal to 2 into 1 plus 4. Now multiplying that through, we have 2 times 1 is 2, plus 4 is 6. So the coordinate of E would eventually be 1 and 6. Okay, so looking at the information, they've given us the equation of the straight line, which is this here, and we are asked to find the equation of g of x. Now we know the parabola is the g of x. So looking at the information on the parabola, we notice that the intercepts are given to us. This is our y-intercept, which is that 18, and we know these two are the x-intercepts. So we have ample information to sort out this question. Now let's start off by using the format of the parabola, which is y is equal to ax squared plus q. Now we know that q is our intercept, our y-intercept. So let's substitute that. The y-intercept is 18. Okay, now we are given 2 points here, so we'll use one of these points. Let's use this. We know this coordinate here will actually be minus 3 and 0. So let's use that, and we're going to substitute it into this formula here. So our y value there will be 0 is equal to a is what we're going to solve for, and the x value will be minus 3, and remember it's squared. So we take the 18 on the other side, we'll have minus 18 is equal to a into 9. Okay, then writing it down properly, we'll have 9a. So divide both sides by 9, and we see that a will be equal to minus 2. So now that we know our a value, we know our q value, we can say the equation of g of x is now y is equal to minus 2x squared plus 18. Okay, so we have y is equal to minus 2x, my bad, minus 2x plus squared plus 18 for the parabola. So they're asking us what is the range of g of x. So we know that the range is all the y values. So we are dealing with the y values that pertain to g. So if you look at it, we notice that the g, all the y values go all the way right up to 18, right, and it carries on to infinity. So it will stop at 18. So all we are saying is the range, what is the range would be is all the numbers that are including 18 and below. So we also know that this will be all the numbers. Now all the numbers means that y will be an element of real numbers because we are using every number. So therefore our answer would be y is less than and equals to 18 because we're stopping at 18, and y is an element of real numbers. So with this in mind, like the previous question, right, we can use that information, and we see that they are asking us for which values of x is g of x increasing. Now remember, what I mean that by the information is that 18 is what we call the turning point, right? It's called the turning point, or it's called our maximum value. Now that maximum value, why it is called that way, is when a is greater than 0, that means we have a smiling face, so therefore this graph will have a minimum value. That means at this point here there will be a minimum value. Then when a is less than 0, we'll say that this graph is sad, so this here will be our maximum value. Now basically what we are asking here, for which values of x is g of x increasing. So we know that 18 is our maximum value, so we notice the graph will start tending towards the maximum value on this side of the graph. That means all these values here, all these values here. So therefore we know that at 0 the graph will be 18, because we know that that's our intercept. So it will be all the values that are below 0. So therefore we will say for x less than 0. Now for all the values x less than 0, this graph is increasing. So determine the point of intersection. Right, now remember the graph is minus 2x squared plus 18. So what is the point of intersection? That's P. It is this area here. So by this we mean that these two graphs are equal at that point. So all I need to do is take these two graphs here and equate it to each other and solve it. So I'll have x plus 3 is equal to minus 2x squared plus 18. So let's bring everything onto one side. We have 2x squared, right, plus x minus 18 plus 3 is equal to 0. So we'll have 2x squared plus x minus 15 is equal to 0. Now we know that we have to use the cross method to work out this answer. Now remember that this amounts will be 2 times 1 for the 2, and for the 15 it will be 5 times 3. So when we cross multiply, we'll have 2 times, now remember we need to get the x value, which is 1. 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 5 is 5. You should know this by now. 6 minus 5 is 1. Right, now I got the center one, so looking at it, one will take the plus, one will take the minus. So we'll have this to take the minus, which is a smaller one, and the bigger one normally takes the sign of the center. So let's do this. It'll be 2x minus 5 into x plus 3. That will be 0. So we know that x will be equal to 5 over 2, or x will be equal to minus 3. Now we know we are looking at the coordinate of P, and we know that P will have a coordinate that is positive. So therefore this will be the x value for P. So let's look at P. We'll say P is 5 over 2. So now keeping this in mind, so let's substitute and get the y value. So we'll say y is equal to, now remember the graphs are intersecting, so I can use either one of the graphs to substitute. I've got 5 over 2 plus 3, and that will be 5 over 2 plus, this will be 6 over 2, and that will give me 11 over 2. So that's my y value. So therefore the coordinate of P is actually 5 over 2 and 11 over 2. Okay, find the length of ST if T and S are the intercepts for F and G respectively. Okay, so what they want us to do is to find this length here. Here's my S, there's my T. These are the y-intercepts. So that's very, very simple. We've got the y-intercept for F here, the y-intercept for G here. So all I need to do is to subtract them. So I'll say therefore it'll be 18 minus 3, and my answer will be 15 units. Okay, so give the equation of the new parabola h of x if g of x is translated 18 units down. So we know common sense, if we had to translate this all the way down, this graph here, it would sit right over there. right? And obviously we can see that at this point here, we know it touches the x-axis, and that would be the y-intercept. So our y value will obviously be 0, which will be our y-intercept, right? So now we're coming to the equation. Let's put it down in the equation. We have y is equal to, there's a parabola equation here, minus 2x squared plus 18. So they are saying now that suddenly this thing has moved 18 units down. So we know that that's your y-intercept. Your y-intercept as you moved 18 units down. So therefore we'll end up with y is equal to minus 2x squared, and that will be your new formula. And if you see, or equation, if you see where it's sitting, you'll notice that your intercept is sitting on the x-axis, which would obviously show 0, and therefore we don't have to write it.